You trust technology to keep you safe every time you board a plane. But what if the real danger slips through the machines, and the only thing that can stop it is an animal's instinct? One ordinary afternoon at Reagan National Airport, K-9 officer Bella Carter felt the weight of that question more than ever. It was a muggy spring day, the kind where the humid air clung to your skin and tempers ran a little short. Planes rumbled overhead, taxis lined up at the curb, and inside, every terminal was a blur of tired faces and rolling suitcases. Bella Carter, just 32 but already with lines of worry etched around her eyes, adjusted her uniform and gave a quick scratch behind the ears of her partner, Shadow. The German Shepherd was always on alert, every muscle ready, dark eyes following every twitch and footstep. She and Shadow had been working since dawn, sniffing baggage, patrolling the gates, nodding politely to the kids who stared in awe at Shadow's badge. Bella was proud of her recent promotion, but the shadow of her last near-fatal call still lingered. She could never forget how Shadow had dragged her to safety after her radio went dead, and chaos exploded all around them. That bond, unspoken, bone-deep, had changed everything. Now, as the sun set in streaks of orange and pink behind the hangars, Bella was more than ready to end her shift. She'd promised her little sister she'd FaceTime tonight. She longed for a quiet dinner, a soft bed, but fate had other plans. Just as Bella reached for Shadow's leash to head inside, her partner's entire body tensed. His ears shot forward, nose twitching furiously. Before she could react, Shadow lunged forward, tearing free from her grasp. "Shadow, heel!" Bella shouted, but her voice was lost in the rising roar of an airplane engine. Shadow sprinted across the tarmac, straight toward a Boeing 737, its lights blazing and wheels already rolling. Bella's heart punched against her ribs. "Stop! That's my dog!" she screamed, waving her arms. But no one was looking at her. Everyone's eyes were on the lumbering plane, its engines whining as it picked up speed. In a split second that felt like slow motion, Shadow planted himself dead center in the path of the jet. Legs braced, tail rigid, body trembling like a live wire. Ground crew gasped. A baggage cart slammed to a halt, crates tumbling. A traffic controller's voice barked through a crackling radio. "Code red! Code red! There's an animal on the runway!" Inside the cockpit, Captain Mike Dalton's hands jerked on the controls. The plane's nose dipped. He slammed on the brakes so hard that the massive machine shuddered and groaned. Metal screeched against tarmac. In the cabin, passengers shrieked. Overhead bins rattled. A cup of coffee flew from a startled flight attendant's hand and splattered across the wall. Bella sprinted after Shadow, adrenaline surging, panic battling with her training. If Shadow was wrong, if he was just spooked by a stray rabbit or the smell of jet fuel, it would be the end of her career. If he wasn't, then every second mattered. She could barely hear herself think through the wail of sirens, the angry yells from the tower, and the screeching brakes. When she reached Shadow, she dropped to her knees beside him, chest heaving, sweat soaking her shirt beneath her vest. "What is it, boy?" she whispered, voice raw, trying to steady her shaking hands as she stroked his back. Shadow didn't budge. He pressed forward, barking once, sharp, urgent like a warning shot. His eyes never left the cargo hold of the plane, locked onto something only he could sense. A crowd formed along the edge of the tarmac. Passengers pressed against the windows, cell phones out, filming. Ground crew argued with each other, their radios buzzing with overlapping orders. Over it all, the pilot's voice came through the PA system, strained but steady. "Remain seated. We have an emergency situation on the runway." Bella could see the tower, its windows reflecting the dying sunlight, and imagined the chaos unfolding inside. Supervisors yelling, controllers updating the FAA, her own supervisor probably cursing her name. She had to make a decision. If she called Shadow off and it turned out to be nothing, she'd look like a fool. If she didn't, and the threat was real, every soul on that plane might be in danger. A police SUV screeched to a stop behind her. Out jumped Linda Brooks, the airport's tough-as-nails security chief. Her shoes were already caked in tarmac dust. "Carter, get that animal off my runway now!" she shouted, voice slicing through the noise. Bella's mind raced. Shadow had never failed her, not once. She thought of the night he saved her life, pulling her from fire when no one else could reach her. Could she risk everything, her badge, her future, on that trust? As she crouched there, Shadow's fur warm beneath her palm and the jet's massive engines cooling a few yards away, Bella made her choice. She would trust Shadow, no matter the cost. She would trust that sometimes the world's best machine couldn't match the instincts of a loyal friend. In that moment, as day slipped into night and sirens faded beneath the thrum of the airport's heartbeat, Bella and Shadow stood together in the crosshairs of a storm no one saw coming. The echoes of sirens and the distant hum of airplane engines pressed in from all sides. Bella stood on the tarmac, her knees dust-stained, Shadow pressed against her, as if daring anyone to get close. The world felt frozen in time, the air electric with a tension that even the fading sunlight couldn't thaw. Every eye was on her, ground crew whispering, airline staff with arms folded tight across their chests, passengers crowding against the airport windows, filming, judging, waiting for someone to break the standoff. Chief Linda Brooks stormed forward, her stride as sharp as her voice. "Officer Carter, leash your dog and clear the runway, now." She didn't bother lowering her tone. Behind her, 2 security officers flanked the perimeter, radios crackling. Somewhere in the confusion, a young man in a designer suit, Victor Langley, CEO of tech conglomerate Langley Dynamics, pushed his way past a cluster of airline staff, his face red, voice booming. "Do you know how much money my company loses for every minute that plane's delayed?" He spat, glaring at Bella as if she'd orchestrated this entire mess just to spite him. Bella's mind raced, searching for words that would matter. She held up a hand, desperate to buy a second more. "Chief, please. Something's wrong. Shadow's never done this. I know that dog better than I know myself. There's a reason he's blocking that plane." Brooks' lips curled. "A dog's reason doesn't pay the bills, officer. Leash him, or I'll have you both off this runway and out of a job. This airport runs on protocol, not feelings." Bella swallowed hard. Shadow's fur bristled under her palm, his gaze never leaving the belly of the aircraft, ears pinned forward, every muscle coiled. She remembered a moment from months ago, the day her radio jammed during a bomb threat in the parking garage. While tech failed, Shadow had sniffed out the danger, dragging her from the blast zone seconds before disaster. Shadow wasn't just a partner. He was a lifeline, a friend who didn't understand good enough, only safe. Her supervisor, Lieutenant Hall, jogged over, face pale. He leaned in close, his voice lower. "Bella, I'm telling you, leash Shadow and let the plane go. You're out of chances after last month. You make trouble now, you're finished. I can't protect you from Brooks or the brass. The mayor's on the line. This is a PR nightmare." But Bella's grip on Shadow's collar only tightened. "Sir, please. You weren't there that night. Shadow, he's never been wrong. Let me check the plane. Just this once." Hall pinched the bridge of his nose. Torn. The pressure was building. Behind them, Victor Langley was waving his phone, demanding to speak to the FAA. The airline's chief pilot, Mike Dalton, stood by his open cockpit window, trying to calm passengers through the PA, but his voice was losing its edge. Social media was already ablaze, phones up everywhere. Bella stared into Shadow's eyes, searching for even a flicker of uncertainty. There was none, only raw, unwavering determination. Her heart pounded. The right choice meant trusting a gut feeling, a bond built through fire and fear. The wrong choice could cost lives, or her career. She stood, shoulders squared, voice trembling but clear. "Chief, if you want to fire me, fine, but I'm not calling Shadow off until someone checks that plane. If he's wrong, I'll walk away right now. But if he's right," Brooke's eyes flashed. "You've got 5 minutes, Carter. If I don't have answers by then, I'll have you and that mutt off my runway, and the next plane you see will be the one taking you out of this city for good." A hush fell as Bella stepped forward, Shadow at her heel. The moment felt impossibly fragile, every second stretching like a tightrope over open air. She didn't look at the cameras or the scowling executives. She only listened to the quick, shallow breaths of her dog, the partner who'd never lied to her. The ground crew, now joined by airport police, reluctantly cleared a path. Passengers peered out, confusion and fear mixing on their faces. Bella felt every stare burning into her back. Was she risking all of this for nothing? Had she finally cracked under pressure, letting a traumatic memory override her judgment? Or was she the only one willing to trust what couldn't be explained by machines and checklists? Shadow led her, nose low, across the painted lines of the tarmac to the side of the plane. As they passed, a young ground handler whispered, "Don't let them push you out. Sometimes a dog knows better." Bella almost smiled. Victor Langley, still fuming, barked into his phone, "Delay my jet again, and I'll sue the city out of existence." His assistant scurried behind him, typing frantic notes. A ripple of tension rolled through the crowd as Bella paused, kneeling beside Shadow at the cargo hold. The door hadn't opened yet. The plane's engines still ticked, cooling. She saw Dalton's anxious face in the cockpit window and gave him a small nod. He nodded back, trusting her, at least for now. Shadow's entire body trembled with anticipation, eyes locked on the cargo bay door. For a moment, Bella's doubt flickered. Had she made a mistake? Was she gambling everything she loved on a feeling, a memory? Then Shadow let out a sharp, low bark, the kind that meant only one thing: danger. Bella braced herself, ready for the next battle, knowing that the real test of loyalty and courage was only beginning. The tension on the tarmac felt sharp enough to slice the thick dusk air. As Bella crouched beside Shadow, trying to keep her hands steady, the airport's chaos grew behind her. Sirens fading into shouts, angry executives calling their lawyers, nervous families clutching their children in the terminal as news of the lockdown began to spread. A squad of TSA agents and airport police finally approached, led by a silver-haired officer with a heavy-set frame and a scowl that looked carved from stone. "Officer Carter," he barked, "you and your dog have caused a citywide alert. You better pray this is more than a false alarm." Bella stood her ground, feeling the sting of every skeptical gaze. "Shadow doesn't make mistakes. Check the plane. Start with the cargo hold." The lead TSA agent exchanged a glance with Chief Brooks, who gave the smallest, most reluctant nod. With that, the crew sprang into action, radios crackling, orders snapped back and forth. The ramp agent unlocked the cargo door with trembling hands, sweat beading on his brow despite the evening chill. As the latch released, the door groaned open, and the smell of jet fuel and sun-baked rubber rolled out. Shadow lunged forward, teeth bared, hackles raised, barking in a low, furious rhythm, directed not at the people, but at a single gray container pushed far against the wall of the hold. "Get back!" someone shouted, as Shadow strained at his leash, almost pulling Bella off her feet. A cluster of police formed a protective ring, their tension contagious. Some watched with awe, others with barely concealed suspicion. One rookie officer muttered to his partner, "If that dog's wrong, we'll never live this down." Meanwhile, a voice cut through the crowd, softer but persistent. "Excuse me, press, let me through." It was Sam Taylor, a local reporter. Tall, thin, awkward in his two new shoes. Sam had a notepad in one hand and a camera in the other. He stopped a few feet back, nervous around Shadow, childhood fears bubbling up despite his determination. Sam's eyes darted from the dog to Bella, then to the tense scene inside the cargo hold. "Officer Carter, can you comment?" he began, but Bella waved him off with a look that could freeze fire. From the growing crowd, another figure stepped forward, Dr. Alan Fisher, a retired defense scientist and expert on airport security technology. Fisher's years had not softened his air of alertness. His gaze swept the scene with clinical intensity, taking in every detail. He'd only come to the airport for a friend's arrival, but now something in Shadow's behavior gripped him. Fisher edged closer, noting the dog's fixation on the specific crate. Inside the cargo bay, two officers, gloved and cautious, inspected the flagged container. "It's locked up tight, Chief. No unusual markings. Manifest says electronics." The lead TSA agent hesitated, voice wary. "Should we open it here?" Chief Brooks' jaw worked as she glanced at Bella, then at the cameras. She knew this was a spectacle now. "Follow procedure. Secondary search. But keep that animal under control. Carter, if your mutt bites anyone, you're both done." As they moved to haul the crate out, Shadow went wild, whining and pawing at the tarmac. Bella knelt beside him, feeling his anxiety vibrate through her bones. She caught Sam Taylor's eye, saw the nervous sweat on his brow, the flicker of something like sympathy. Sam, notebook trembling, finally broke his silence. "Is it true?" he asked quietly. "Did Shadow really save you in that bombing last year?" Bella, caught off guard, glanced at him. "He did," she admitted. "Tech failed. He didn't." In that instant, a wave of doubt hit her. Had she staked everything on a memory, on instinct instead of evidence? She tried to shut out the rising voices around her, the persistent threat of Brooks's anger, the possibility that this was all a terrible mistake. As the officers slid the crate down to the tarmac, Dr. Fisher stepped closer. He examined the label, brow furrowed. "That's odd," he muttered to no one in particular. "Those numbers don't match the standard coding for electronic shipments." Sam edged closer, notebook ready. "What's wrong?" he asked, voice almost hopeful for a story, almost afraid of one. Fisher didn't answer immediately. Instead, he crouched to Shadow's level, regarding the dog with new respect. "Sometimes," he said softly, "the oldest methods catch what new tech can't." He turned to Bella. "What's your gut say?" Bella felt the heat of the crowd, the harsh lights of the runway, the ache in her knees from crouching so long. "My gut says trust Shadow," she whispered. "He's never led me wrong." The crate was positioned in the middle of a growing ring of officers, bomb techs, and onlookers. Shadow pressed so close to Bella's side that she could feel the rapid-fire drum of his heart. Every second stretched. In the crowd, Sam found himself breathing in sync with the dog, memories flashing. His brother lost in a flight disaster years before. His childhood fear of big, loud dogs mixing with awe. One by one, the officers backed away from the crate as the bomb squad prepped their tools. "Ready?" the lead technician called, and the crowd hushed. As they began to probe the crate, scanning with every tool at their disposal, Shadow let out a long, low whine and pressed his nose into Bella's palm. She squeezed his head, trying to lend him her calm, though her heart threatened to thunder out of her chest. She was afraid of being wrong, of being right, of what waited inside that unmarked box. In that charged silence, the line between fear and faith felt thinner than ever. And as the crate's seal was broken and the mystery began to unravel, every eye waited. Because sometimes the fate of hundreds depended not on machines, but on the conviction of a single voice willing to trust what no one else could see. The tension on the runway thickened as officers prepared for the secondary search. Flashing lights from patrol cars painted the tarmac in streaks of blue and red. Every move seemed magnified, every word, every gesture watched by a swelling audience of travelers, airline staff, and law enforcement. News helicopters hovered overhead, their blades chopping the sky and their cameras zooming in on the circle that had formed around the suspicious crate. Bella stood shoulder to shoulder with Shadow, her gloved hand resting on his broad back. Her nerves felt raw, exposed to the world. She barely registered the hum of voices around her, the techs, the bomb squad, the reporters pushing for a better view. She was lost in memory, the scent of jet fuel mixing with the sharp memory of burned concrete, of alarms screaming, of Shadow pulling her out of a collapsing garage after her radio died in a haze of static and fear. The bomb technician worked slowly, hands sure but cautious. He slid a thin, specialized probe through a crack in the crate's edge, studying the readout on a handheld monitor. His partner held up a Geiger counter. Nothing. Another officer scanned the crate with an electronic sniffer for chemical explosives. Still nothing. The digital screens all glowed green. It should have been reassuring. But Shadow didn't settle. He circled the crate, nose quivering, hackles high, letting out a deep guttural whine that made even the most skeptical officers step back. Bella knelt beside him, whispering, "Easy, buddy. I'm here." Her hand shook as she stroked his ears. Shadow pressed into her side as if reminding her that she wasn't alone. Sam Taylor hovered just behind the police tape, his notepad forgotten. For once, the young reporter's curiosity was tinged with something deeper, a dawning empathy. Watching Bella and Shadow together, he couldn't help but remember the day his brother never came home. The day a technical error on a flight claimed dozens of lives. He'd always hated airports since. And he'd always feared dogs, too. Their size, their unpredictability. But Shadow was different. There was something in the dog's unwavering focus that made Sam want to believe. He raised his phone to capture a photo. Bella's determined face, Shadow's tense body. In that frame, he saw more than a police handler and her dog. He saw a bond that might save everyone present, if only someone would listen. Dr. Alan Fisher, standing to the side, approached Bella, concern etched in the lines of his face. "Officer Carter," he said quietly, "when you worked with Shadow before, did you ever see this kind of reaction?" His voice was low, trying not to draw more attention from the crowd. Bella shook her head. "Never like this. Not unless it was bad, really bad. Last time was a homemade device. Shadow knew before anyone else." Fisher nodded thoughtfully, glancing at the bomb techs and their unimpressed equipment. "Sometimes old instincts are better than new gadgets," he said. "If Shadow's this upset, there's something here. We're just not seeing it." As the minutes dragged on, Bella felt her nerves start to unravel. Her supervisor, Lieutenant Hall, came over, trying to mask his own anxiety. "Bella, the chief's on me to wrap this up. Everyone's asking why a dog gets to call the shots." He looked at her, his voice softening. "You sure about this?" She nodded. "I have to be. Shadow's never led me wrong, sir. Not once." Hall hesitated. All right, you got one shot at this. Make it count. He stepped away, shielding his radio as he argued with a voice from command. A technician with trembling hands cracked the crate's seal and slowly opened the lid. Everyone stepped back. The interior was packed with layers of foam, cables, and metal boxes stamped with strange serial numbers. The technician lifted a metallic device the size of a large suitcase. He called out, "No trigger, no timer, no visible wires, just electronics." He wiped sweat from his brow. Shadow suddenly lunged, barking furiously, nose pressed to the side of the device. Bella pulled him back, struggling to keep control. "Shadow, heel!" she ordered, but the dog wouldn't budge. He whined and snapped at the air as if desperate to make himself understood. Sam, compelled by the urgency, stepped closer. "Let me talk to her," he said to an officer, ducking under the tape. "Bella, what if he's right? What if it's something new, something that doesn't show up on their scans?" Bella looked at him, desperation in her eyes. "That's what scares me, Sam. Last time I nearly died because the tech failed. Shadow was the only reason I survived. I can't turn him off now. Not when he's this sure." Sam nodded, lowering his voice. "My brother. He died on a flight. They said it was a malfunction. But what if someone missed something? What if there was a sign, just not the kind machines catch?" The admission seemed to surprise him as much as her. The technician hesitated, glancing at the crowd. "Dr. Fisher, can you take a look at this?" Fisher stepped forward, his practiced hands moving carefully over the device. He frowned, examining hidden seams, non-standard connectors, and unusual metal alloys. "This doesn't match any regular commercial shipment. Some of these parts I've only seen in government work, and not for public use. And that shielding, that's meant to hide something from scanners." He looked up, meeting Bella's gaze. "Shadow's not wrong. This shouldn't be here." The tension ratcheted up another notch. Bella squeezed Shadow's collar, her voice cracking. "You hear that, boy? You did good." In the growing silence, Sam hit record on his phone. He captured Bella and Shadow, silhouetted by the pulsing runway lights, framed by doubt but anchored in trust. And as the last rays of sunlight faded behind the glass and steel, Bella realized what was truly at stake. Not just her job, or her partner's reputation, but the lesson that sometimes, when the world runs on checklists and machines, you have to trust something deeper, something old and loyal and brave. A single act of faith could be all that stood between safety and catastrophe. The airport was in chaos, rumors swirling, crowds growing restless behind security barriers, cell phones capturing every twitch of police tape, and every anxious look from the officers on the tarmac. The crate that Shadow had flagged sat in the center of a growing ring of suspicion and uncertainty, flanked by officers, bomb techs, and now federal agents who had rushed in after the initial search failed to explain the dog's agitation. As the night deepened, the runway lights cast harsh white beams over the scene. Bella stood firm by Shadow's side, her back aching but her resolve harder than ever. She could feel the skepticism around her thick as smog. Yet every time she met Shadow's eyes, she was anchored by his absolute conviction. An unmarked black SUV rolled onto the tarmac, its headlights off. The doors opened, and two men in dark suits and earpieces stepped out, followed by a third, a severe-looking woman clutching a slim briefcase. She flashed her credentials with icy efficiency. "Federal Agent Monroe, step back, please." The bomb techs and local police deferred without argument, but Monroe didn't even spare Bella or Shadow a glance. Her focus was solely on the device. Dr. Fisher, drawn by the commotion, pushed forward. "Excuse me, Agent, That device doesn't match any commercial standards. That shielding, it's government grade, likely meant to evade detection. Monroe gave him a sharp look, but before she could answer, Fisher pressed on. You need to check for an active source. That dog's nose knows more than any scanner here. Monroe, her expression unreadable, gestured to her team. They unpacked specialized detectors and radiation badges, but the initial sweeps still came up empty. No explosives, no radiation. Nothing to warrant Shadow's frantic distress. Shadow, however, was relentless. He circled the crate, teeth bared, low growls vibrating through his chest. He pawed at the ground so violently that his nails sparked against the pavement, whining with rising desperation. Bella dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around him. Shadow, easy. I'm here. Whatever it is, we'll find it. For a fleeting second, she pressed her forehead to his, drawing on the silent strength that had saved her life before. Victor Langley, the tech CEO, reappeared, flanked by his assistant and security detail. His face was slick with sweat despite the cool night. I want that plane cleared. You're ruining my company's schedule. Do you know who I am? His bravado was cracked by the presence of federal agents. When Monroe's gaze flicked to him, he faltered, quickly dialing his phone. Get my lawyer. Now, he hissed, voice shaking. A commotion rippled through the crowd as Sam Taylor moved in closer, recording everything on his phone. The tension was so thick, it felt like another storm was about to break. Monroe called over Dr. Fisher. You say you know this kind of device, explain. Fisher's hands shook ever so slightly as he leaned in, careful not to get too close. I helped design an early version, something to mask specific chemical traces, to be used in covert operations. It was never supposed to go commercial. If someone smuggled an active core inside, it could evade all airport security scans except one, a trained dog's nose. Bella's blood ran cold. You're saying there's something inside that could, what, explode? Leak? Fisher shook his head, voice grim. Not exactly. It could house almost anything. Biological, chemical, even a new kind of explosive no scanner detects. Shadows reacting to the faintest signature. That's the only warning we'll get. Monroe's composure broke for the first time. She snapped her fingers. Full lockdown. Nobody moves this crate until I say so. The entire airport seemed to hold its breath as alarms blared and announcements echoed through the terminal. Attention all personnel. Security lockdown in effect. Please remain in place until further notice. Langley's voice climbed an octave as he barked into his phone. This can't be happening. Get my legal team on the line now. Shadow, momentarily exhausted, leaned into Bella's arms, his chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. She hugged him tight, tears stinging her eyes, not just from fear, but from a strange pride. The world might be doubting her, but her partner had never let her down. Sam Taylor's camera caught it all, the federal agents' tense faces, the bomb techs arguing quietly, the CEO melting under the pressure, and Bella, her uniform rumpled, hair wild, crouched beside her dog like a mother refusing to leave her child's bedside. Fisher leaned closer to Bella. Shadow just saved every life in this terminal. If that crate had been loaded, if that plane had left. He let the sentence hang, the unspoken horror clear. Monroe's agents carefully opened the crate further, peeling back the lead lining. Inside, sealed in heavy plastic, was a small device, wires coiled around a steel core, an odd chemical odor rising. One agent recoiled. It's not on any manifest. We need the CDC and military here now. Langley's face went white as the implications sank in. Monroe turned on him, voice ice. You'll be answering for this. The entire airport buzzed with rumors. Was it a bomb, a virus, a new kind of terror. The only certainty was this: without Shadow's instincts, no one would have known until it was too late. As Bella sat back on her heels, Shadow resting his tired head in her lap, she heard a ripple of applause from the onlookers behind the barriers. Someone started chanting, "Good dog, good dog." The phrase spread, rising over the sirens and angry voices. For a moment, all the fear and suspicion faded, replaced by something close to hope. Bella pressed her cheek to Shadow's fur and whispered, "We did it, boy. We saved them. No one can ever take that from us." But even in this fleeting victory, Bella knew trouble was far from over. There would be questions, investigations, and powerful people eager to shift blame. The night was just beginning. But for the first time, Bella felt the strength of every choice she'd made. Because sometimes, true heroism is simply refusing to ignore a warning, even when no one else can see the danger. Night at Reagan National Airport felt colder after the chaos. The air was sharp, almost metallic, laced with adrenaline and a tension that refused to dissipate. Police tape and barricades kept the public at bay, but the real lines being drawn were invisible. Lines of blame, loyalty, and self-preservation. Federal Agent Monroe had taken charge, barking orders into her radio as her team cordoned off the evidence. Dr. Fisher was led away by a stern agent, his hands shaking as he tried to explain the science behind the device. Victor Langley paced the edge of the chaos, his cell phone pressed so hard to his ear it might shatter. Each call only seemed to make his panic worse. "Just fix it. Do whatever it takes," he snapped at his lawyer, sweat beading on his brow. Bella's adrenaline was crashing. She found herself beside Shadow, who was finally lying down, his breathing ragged but eyes still alert. Bella crouched, running her hand over his fur in slow circles, needing the grounding as much as he did. "You did so good," she murmured, the edge of tears in her throat. The world outside their small circle was moving too fast, decisions being made that were out of her hands. A uniformed officer approached, flanked by two men in dark suits. "Officer Carter?" She stood, squaring her shoulders even as fatigue threatened to buckle her knees. "By order of the Federal Aviation Administration, you're to be suspended pending an internal investigation. Your badge and firearm, please." For a moment, Bella's world blurred. The humiliation, the injustice, the helpless anger, she fought to swallow them. She unclipped her badge, placed her service weapon in the officer's outstretched hand, and glanced down at Shadow. "What about my partner?" she asked, voice tight. One of the men, a federal K-9 specialist, stepped forward. "Shadow will be taken to our facility for evaluation. Standard protocol after a major incident. You can say goodbye." His tone was cool, clinical. The implication was clear. Shadow's fate was as uncertain as hers. Bella dropped to her knees, hugging Shadow's thick neck, fighting back tears. "I won't let them take you for good, I promise. We did the right thing." Shadow pressed his muzzle into her chest, whining softly, not understanding but sensing her pain. Sam Taylor caught it all on his phone. The moment Bella's arms wrapped around Shadow, the silent promise in her eyes, the steeliness mixed with heartbreak. He wanted to call out, to intervene, but already agents were herding him back, threatening to confiscate his camera. "If you publish a word of this, we'll bury you in lawsuits," one agent whispered, barely audible over the hum of generators. Dr. Fisher, meanwhile, found himself isolated in a cramped interview room near the security office. Agents grilled him, not just about the device, but about his previous work and whether he had leaked any technology. "I never wanted this in the wrong hands," Fisher protested, but it was clear they didn't want an explanation. They wanted a scapegoat. Outside, Victor Langley's legal team mobilized, swarming Monroe and her agents with threats of countersuits, accusations of unlawful detention, and warnings about irreparable damage to the American economy. But Monroe was unyielding. "Your name's all over the flight manifest, Mr. Langley. You'll answer to the Justice Department," she declared. But Langley's smirk showed he still believed money could fix anything. Back at the K9 kennel, Bella was allowed one last visit before Shadow's transfer. The room was harshly lit, concrete floors echoing with the sounds of anxious dogs. Shadow sat in the back of his run, eyes fixed on the door until Bella stepped in. He leapt up, tail thumping weakly, whining with joy and confusion. Bella slid inside, knelt down, and pressed her forehead to his. "They can't keep us apart, not for long. I promise I'll fight for you with everything I have." Shadow licked her cheek, sensing her distress. She spoke softly. "You're my hero, Shadow. You always have been, and you always will be." But even as she spoke the words, fear gnawed at her. She remembered the looks from the agents, their distrust, their need to control the narrative. It wouldn't take much for them to brand Shadow as unreliable, to ensure he'd never work again. Or worse, that he'd simply disappear into a government kennel, his story lost among bureaucratic red tape. Leaving the kennel was the hardest thing she'd ever done. As the heavy metal door clanged shut behind her, Bella's hands trembled, not from weakness, but from fury at a system so eager to silence those who do the right thing. Sam, still reeling from what he'd witnessed, tried to find her as she left the building. "Bella, wait!" He caught up, panting. "You have to fight this. People need to know what happened, what you and Shadow did." She looked at him, torn between hope and exhaustion. "They'll bury it, Sam. They always do. People like Langley, they don't face consequences. People like me, we're made examples." Sam shook his head. "Not this time. I'll go public. You have my word." Bella gave him a tired, grateful smile. "Just be careful. They're not above coming after you, too." Dr. Fisher was released just before dawn, his reputation bruised, but his resolve stronger than ever. He found Bella waiting outside, eyes red but jaw set. "We're not giving up, Alan. Shadow deserves better. So do all the people who trust in something more than machines." He nodded. "I'll help you however I can. Langley thinks he's untouchable, but even the biggest can fall. We just need proof." Bella, Sam, and Dr. Fisher stood together in the gray light of morning, uncertain what would come next, but certain of one thing. Truth was on their side, even if it cost them everything. Inside the kennel, Shadow stared at the door, ears pricked, waiting for his handler. He didn't understand politics or power. He only understood loyalty and the unbreakable bond between a dog and the person who believed in him, no matter the consequences. The world beyond the airport felt oddly muted, as if the city itself was holding its breath. For Bella, each step she took away from the chaos on the tarmac felt heavier. Her mind replayed every moment, Shadow's wild insistence, the look of betrayal in Chief Brooks's eyes, the humiliation of surrendering her badge. But giving up wasn't in her nature. As she wandered the parking garage, phone pressed to her ear, she was already plotting the next move. On the other end, Dr. Fisher's voice was low and urgent. "I found something, Bella. There's a pattern to Langley Dynamics cargo. Irregular shipments, gaps in documentation, flights rerouted last minute. It's not just tonight. This is bigger than one crate." Bella gripped the steering wheel of her battered Honda, heart thumping. "We can't go to internal affairs. They're already bought and paid for." She remembered the hard stares of Monroe's agents, the way they shut down questions and controlled the scene. We'll need evidence, the kind they can't ignore. Let me help, Sam Taylor's voice crackled over the line. He'd called minutes after leaving the airport, his voice shaky but determined. My editor's hesitant, but if I can bring proof, documents, recordings, anything, they'll run with it. Bella, this isn't just a story for me. It's about what's right. Meet me tonight, Bella said. Not at home. Somewhere safe. The team gathered after midnight in the cluttered back room of a dog shelter, owned by one of Bella's old friends. A place where surveillance was just a leaky security camera taped to a broomstick. Shadow, temporarily stashed there under the radar, perked up the moment Bella entered, tail thumping against the crate. Their reunion was brief but fierce. Bella knelt, burying her face in his fur. Good boy. I missed you. Just a little longer, I promise. Dr. Fisher spread out his findings on the table. Cargo manifests, encrypted shipping logs, emails forwarded by a sympathetic airport employee. Sam unpacked a battered laptop, set up a hotspot, and started tracing flight patterns. Look, he said, pulling up a map dotted with red pins. There's a cluster here. 3 flights in the last month, all with Langley's name on the paperwork, all flagged by K-9 teams, but every report got overridden by upper management. Bella studied the documents, her jaw tightening. They're laundering these shipments through legitimate channels, and anyone who questions it gets benched, or worse. Fisher nodded. Langley Dynamics isn't just pushing tech. They're pushing the limits of what gets caught. Tonight was just one slip. Shadow rested his chin on Bella's knee, his eyes never leaving hers. He seemed to sense the urgency, the danger still circling their small group. For a moment, Bella let herself rest her hand on his head, grounding herself in the familiarity of their bond. Suddenly, Sam's laptop pinged. A message from a source inside the airport flagged urgent. The email read, "There's another shipment. Flight 682. Leaves in 4 hours. If you want proof, this is your only shot." Attached were blurry photos, another lead-lined crate, the same suspicious serial numbers, the same hasty paperwork. 4 hours, Bella muttered, already gathering her things. We need to get ahead of them. If Langley's people catch us, they'll bury us for good. The plan was desperate, bordering on reckless. Dr. Fisher volunteered to monitor airport radio traffic from a safe house, using old contacts to dodge security sweeps. Sam, armed with a fake airport badge and a press vest, would try to get close to the loading bay. Bella, with Shadow disguised in a rescue dog vest, would slip into the restricted area using a forgotten maintenance door she'd found years before. They moved fast, nerves fraying as they dodged security cameras and avoided patrols. Bella's heart raced as she crept through the underground tunnel, Shadow glued to her side. Every echo sounded like footsteps. Every shadow seemed to stretch toward her with menace. But she kept moving, whispering reassurances to Shadow, trusting his instincts more than her own. In the loading bay, the shipment was already in motion. 2 men in Langley Dynamics jackets wheeled the crate toward the plane, laughing as if nothing was wrong. Sam, recording everything from behind a stack of crates, caught every word. Make it quick. Boss says nobody checks the VIP shipments, and after tonight, they'll be too scared to try. Bella's phone vibrated. A text from Fisher. Security's moving your way. 10 minutes, Max. She slid out of the shadows, heart pounding, and approached the crate, Shadow bristling at her side. Suddenly, a flashlight beam caught her face. Hey, you're not supposed to be here, a guard shouted, stepping closer. Bella froze. Shadow tensed, ready to spring. For a split second, everything balanced on a knife's edge. But Sam, thinking fast, jumped from his hiding spot, waving his press badge. "Sir, quick interview for Channel 8. How does it feel to keep DC safe?" The guard, flustered and eager to impress, turned away just long enough for Bella and Shadow to duck behind a luggage cart and make their move. With practiced ease, Shadow sniffed the crate, whining urgently, just as he had before. Bella snapped a quick photo, then filmed as Shadow barked and pawed the ground. Proof. Real proof. In the chaos, the guard realized his mistake. "Hey, stop! Stop right there!" But Bella, Sam, and Shadow were already running, vanishing down the maze of corridors. Fisher's voice crackled over the radio. "Get out now!" They regrouped at the safe house, breathless but triumphant. "We did it," Sam said, grinning through his nerves. "We have everything we need to bring Langley down." Bella hugged Shadow tight, tears of relief finally falling. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, hope glimmered on the horizon. For her, for Shadow, for everyone who'd ever risked everything to do what's right. A faint, bluish haze hung over the runway as the first blush of dawn stretched across the horizon. Most of the airport was still, but at Cargo Gate 7, tension thrummed like a live wire. Bella's heart pounded as she crouched behind a row of baggage carts, Shadow at her side, his body tense and ready. Her phone buzzed, a quick text from Sam. "News crews in position. We're rolling. It's now or never." Through the chain-link fence, Bella watched as the new crate, identical to the one that had nearly slipped past them all, was loaded onto a luggage conveyor. Langley's men were all business, quick, quiet, confident. Their arrogance chilled her. They truly believed no one could touch them. Behind them, Victor Langley himself paced, phone glued to his ear, flanked by lawyers and PR handlers. His voice carried, "Tell the board I have everything under control. Nothing leaves this airport unless I say so." Sam stood a few yards away, a press vest slung over his wrinkled shirt, camera rolling as plainclothes reporters blended into the growing crowd. Dr. Fisher hovered near the perimeter, anxiety etched deep into his face. He'd been on the phone with contacts at the CDC and local news stations all night, finally convincing a handful of honest law enforcement officers to be there. Every second, more bystanders appeared, drawn by the unusual police presence and the flashing lights. Bella took a slow breath. "Ready, Shadow?" The shepherd looked up at her, tail thumping once in answer. She patted his head. "Let's do this, buddy, for everyone who doesn't have a voice." With the first ray of hunt glinting off the control tower, Sam gave the signal, a quick nod. Bella rose and strode out onto the tarmac, Shadow right beside her, confident and proud. She could feel every eye on her. Airport security, federal agents, reporters, the stunned crew. There was a hush, then a murmur as people recognized her. Suspended officer. The woman whose dog had shut down a plane and, some said, a city's morning commute. Langley wheeled around, eyes wild. "Who let her in here? She's trespassing! Get her out now!" But before security could react, Bella raised her voice, strong and clear. "This is a public safety action. There's an imminent threat on this crate, just like last night." Cameras spun to focus. Sam streamed live. Reporters thrust microphones in her face. Fisher stepped forward, waving a folder of documentation. "I am Dr. Alan Fisher, former Defense Department scientist. I can confirm that these shipments contain technology designed to evade all known airport detection. Only a dog's nose, like Officer Shadow's, can catch it." Bella turned to the growing crowd, her voice urgent. "Last night we found a device inside a similar crate, undetectable to every scanner except this dog. This morning, it's happening again. If you load this crate onto a flight, you endanger everyone on board." Langley's face contorted with fury, Lies. This is a smear campaign. I demand. A police lieutenant cut him off, holding up a hand. We'll let the dog work. He nodded to Bella. Go ahead, Officer Carter. Every breath seemed to hold as Bella and Shadow approached the crate. Cameras flashed. Shadow went rigid, nose twitching, then barked, loud and sharp, pawing at the side of the container. He circled, then barked again, eyes fixed, every muscle taut with warning. Fisher moved forward, pointing to the serial number on the manifest. That's the same class of shielding. If there's anything inside, we'll find it. For a moment, no one moved. Then, under pressure from the crowd and the broadcast cameras, the lieutenant signaled to his team. A bomb tech unlocked the crate and lifted the lid, revealing the familiar, ominous device, lead-lined, packed in heavy foam, the same signature parts Fisher had flagged. The crowd erupted in gasps and frantic murmurs. Fisher stepped forward, voice shaking with emotion. This device could have slipped through every security protocol, if not for Officer Shadow. Technology has limits, but a good dog's instinct never does. Langley's team surged forward, protesting, but the cameras caught everything. Sam, filming live, pressed in. Dr. Fisher, can you confirm? Fisher nodded, voice firm. Without Shadow, we would have lost control of a potentially catastrophic threat. The old rules aren't enough. This proves it. The press went wild, shouting questions. Bella reached down, hugging Shadow, tears spilling over as the relief and adrenaline finally collided inside her. Around them, applause broke out. First a few scattered claps, then a surge of cheers. Good dog, echoed off the metal hangers. Police closed in on Langley, reading him his rights as the news cameras caught every second. His lawyers screamed objections, but it was too late. Truth had arrived, loud, undeniable, and caught on tape. Honest officers took charge of the scene, securing the crate and escorting Langley away, his face ashen, his empire crumbling in real time. Sam caught Bella's arm, his face beaming. You did it. Shadow did it. The whole world's watching. Dr. Fisher hugged her, trembling with relief. This will change everything. Airports everywhere will see what's possible now. Bella sank to her knees, burying her face in Shadow's fur, overwhelmed. You saved them, boy. You saved us all. As the sun climbed higher, painting the runway in gold, the image was broadcast everywhere. A woman and her dog, defiant and unbowed, standing between disaster and the people they'd sworn to protect. The impossible had become reality, not because of machines or money, but because one handler believed in her partner, and one dog refused to back down. In that moment, Bella knew. Sometimes the bravest act is simply refusing to be silent when everything is on the line. In the aftermath of the morning's chaos, the country's eyes were fixed on Reagan National Airport. News clips of Bella and Shadow circled through every major network and social feed. Within hours, what had begun as a standoff on the tarmac had become a national debate about trust, technology, and the extraordinary power of intuition. For Bella, the days that followed were a whirlwind. She spent hours answering questions for local police, the FAA, and federal agents, her every move dissected and scrutinized. Yet with each retelling, the facts grew clearer, and the tide of public opinion began to shift. The raw footage from the press and Sam Taylor's now viral exposé told a story no one could ignore. A handler who'd risked everything for a partner everyone doubted, and a dog whose instincts had saved lives when technology had failed. Soon, Bella received a formal summons to testify at a televised congressional hearing. The hearing room was packed, not just with lawmakers and journalists, but with members of the public, Flight attendants, pilots, security workers, even children with homemade signs that read, "Thank you, Shadow." Cameras lined the walls, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Bella's uniform had been returned, pressed and spotless, but the weight of the moment felt heavier than any badge. As she sat at the witness table, Shadow curled at her feet, calm and proud. She took a steadying breath. The committee chair, a gray-haired woman with kind eyes, welcomed her. "Officer Carter, we thank you for your courage. Please share your story." Bella's voice, though steady, carried the tremor of emotion. "I became a K-9 officer because I believed in a simple truth. Sometimes a dog's loyalty and instincts are stronger than any machine. I learned that the hard way last year, when an explosive device nearly took my life. My radio failed. Shadow saved me. That day, I promised to always trust him, no matter what it cost." She paused, looking down at her partner, then at the faces before her. "Last week, when Shadow blocked that plane, everyone told me to call him off. They said the scanners showed nothing. The protocols were followed. But I remembered what it felt like to be saved not by technology, but by trust. I knew, deep down, that if I ignored Shadow's warning, I'd never forgive myself." She described those tense hours. Chief Brooks's angry orders, the scorn from powerful men like Langley, the humiliation of being suspended and seeing Shadow taken away. I was scared. I was angry. But I also knew courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's standing your ground when you're terrified and alone. Sometimes it's believing in a partner who can't speak, but who will never let you down. Dr. Fisher, called to testify next, took the seat beside her. "For decades, we've put our faith in technology. We trust machines to keep us safe, to catch what people can't. But machines have limits. I helped build some of the world's best detection devices, and I can tell you, there are things only a living being can sense. Shadow picked up a trace no scanner in the world could find. If we ignore that, if we dismiss the old ways entirely, we leave ourselves blind." He glanced at Bella, a spark of respect in his eyes. Technology and intuition shouldn't be at war. They should work together. Sam Taylor, in a rare moment on the stand, spoke from the heart. "I never liked dogs. I lost my brother in an airline disaster. For years, I thought the system failed us because someone missed a technical detail. But after seeing Bella and Shadow, I realized sometimes the system fails because we stop listening to what's right in front of us. Sometimes courage is a dog who won't move, and a handler who refuses to back down, even when the world tells her she's wrong." The hearing grew quiet as Bella finished. "People ask if I wanted to be a hero. I didn't. I just wanted to keep people safe. Sometimes that means following the rules, but sometimes it means breaking them, because your heart knows something your head can't explain." She smiled down at Shadow, her voice gentle. "If I learned anything, it's that real trust goes both ways. Shadow trusted me to listen. I trusted him to lead. That's how we stopped a disaster. That's what real safety looks like. Not just machines, but relationships built on loyalty, sacrifice, and courage." The committee chair nodded, clearly moved. "Thank you, Officer Carter. You and Shadow have shown this nation what true partnership means." The hearing ended with applause that filled the chamber and spilled out onto the streets. News outlets ran headlines like, "Dog's Instinct Saves Hundreds," "Congress Hears Hero's Story," and "Bella and Shadow, Lessons in Trust." Pilots' unions, K-9 organizations, and even tech leaders began demanding reforms. The FAA launched an immediate review of cargo screening standards, calling for an integration of high-tech and K-9 units at every major airport. Back at home that evening, Bella sat on her porch, Shadow's head resting on her lap, the glow of her phone lighting up with messages of support. Sam called to check in, voice lighter than she'd ever heard. "People believe you, Bella. You gave them hope." Dr. Fisher emailed, attaching draft recommendations for new safety protocols, inspired by Shadow. The subject line read. Bella grinned, her heart full. She looked down at Shadow, rubbing his ears. "We did it, buddy. Not just for us. For everyone who's ever needed someone to listen, someone to believe." And as dusk settled over the city, Bella understood. The bravest thing she'd ever done wasn't stopping a plane or defying orders. It was trusting her partner, even when the world said she was wrong. That's what real courage means. That's what saves lives. Months passed, but the echoes of that fateful dawn at Reagan National Airport rippled across the country. What began as a desperate stand by one woman and her dog became a catalyst for lasting change. From Capitol Hill to the smallest municipal airports, new protocols were drafted, reviewed, and set in motion. Everywhere, people began to talk about trust, not just in machines, but in the intuition that bridges the gap between human and animal, logic and gut. Bella Carter returned to duty with a hero's welcome. The day she was reinstated, the precinct was packed with well-wishers, colleagues, community leaders, grateful passengers, even children with crayon drawings of Shadow in his vest. Shadow, tail wagging and chest puffed with pride, accepted every treat and scratch behind the ears like he finally understood the praise. Bella's new badge, shiny and heavy with meaning, came with a formal promotion. She was now the lead K-9 officer in charge of training the next generation of handlers and their partners. The biggest change, though, was not in her title but in the air itself. Reagan National was the first airport in the nation to implement dual screening protocols. Every piece of cargo and baggage now passed through both advanced technology and trained K-9 units. The media called it the Shadow Standard. Other airports rushed to follow suit, eager to reassure travelers that nothing, no matter how sophisticated, could slip past the senses of a loyal dog. Dr. Alan Fisher was appointed to head an ethics board overseeing tech safety, ensuring that advancements worked hand in hand with old-school instincts. He wrote articles and gave speeches, often opening with, "We must never trust a machine more than we trust each other." His friendship with Bella deepened, their partnership cemented by the crucible they'd survived together. Sam Taylor's story won several journalism awards and became required reading for law enforcement academies. His reporting didn't just change policy, it changed hearts. He received letters from airline staff, security officers, and ordinary people who had lost faith in the system, telling him that Bella and Shadow's courage restored their hope. Even Sam himself found healing. His fear of airports and dogs was replaced with respect and, surprisingly, affection. He visited Bella and Shadow often, sometimes bringing treats, sometimes just to sit quietly on the porch as the sun set. Victor Langley, once untouchable, was indicted on federal charges for illegal shipments, fraud, and conspiracy. The sight of his arrest, broadcast live to millions, became a cautionary tale for corporate leaders everywhere. No amount of power or money could erase the consequences of putting innocent lives at risk. Langley's empire crumbled. His name became synonymous with arrogance brought low by truth. For Bella, the best moment came when she and Shadow were invited to Washington, D.C. The ceremony took place on the steps of Congress. Lawmakers, security officials, and families gathered under a bright blue sky. A little girl, who had once clung to her mother in fear during the airport lockdown, now approached with a bouquet of daisies for Shadow. "Thank you for saving my daddy," she whispered, shy but smiling. Shadow leaned down, nuzzling her hand. As cameras flashed, the Speaker of the House presented Bella with a medal for valor. Officer Carter and Shadow have reminded us all that sometimes the bravest act is to believe in each other, she declared. May their story inspire a new era of safety and compassion across our nation. After the ceremony, Bella and Shadow walked the steps together, the applause ringing in their ears. In that moment, they weren't just Handler and K9. They were symbols of something larger, the power of trust, the meaning of sacrifice, and the hope that even ordinary people and animals can stand between disaster and safety. Back at the airport, Bella resumed her old routine, though nothing felt ordinary anymore. She trained new recruits, emphasizing what couldn't be taught by textbooks. You have to listen, not just with your ears, but with your heart. Your partner will tell you what the scanners can't. Never doubt that bond. Shadow, now legendary, became the standard every rookie aspired to. Sometimes Bella would catch him sitting quietly on the runway at sunset, gaze fixed on the horizon, as if waiting for the next challenge. Life settled into a new rhythm. Bella found herself speaking at schools, sharing Shadow's story with kids who saw courage not as loud or flashy, but as patient and persistent. The phrase, "trust your partner," became her mantra, passed down through generations of handlers. One evening, as the sun painted the tarmac in gold, Bella and Shadow walked the length of the runway together, just as they had on that day when everything changed. Family, colleagues, and even a few former skeptics gathered to cheer. The city's mayor handed Bella a framed proclamation declaring it Shadow and Carter Day. For the first time in a long while, Bella allowed herself to relax, the tension in her shoulders melting into pride and gratitude. She paused at the edge of the runway, crouched beside Shadow, and scratched his ears. "We stopped disaster not because of machines, but because I trusted you, even when it nearly cost me everything," she whispered. Shadow nuzzled her, his eyes shining with devotion. She looked up at the glowing skyline and thought about everything they'd survived. "True courage," she said softly, "is sometimes quiet. A dog who won't move, a handler who refuses to back down. If you want real safety, you need trust, in people, and in the animals who'd give everything for us." As dusk fell and the airport lights blinked on, Bella and Shadow stood side by side, surrounded by those who had doubted but now believed. The world was safer, not just because of technology, but because two souls refused to let fear or pressure silence what they knew was right. And as the final image lingered, the woman and her dog framed by sunset and hope, it was clear: the bravest act of all is simply believing in each other.